How long were you dancing before you started playing with the idea of leading? Was this something that you always wanted to do, or did something specific kind of act as a catalyst for your interest in that?
My friends, we would go clubbing. The rite of passage.
I remember those days.
College. And I love that we go out as a group, we all dressed up. I remember seeing them dance, like they have no dance background, but they just move so freely. So I really wanted that. And so when I started tango, at first I loved knowing what I'm doing because there's patterns, there's figures, you just go, there's guidance because you're not just going in any random direction. So that was nice. And for a while I was happy with that. But after the first 6 months, I moved to a new state. And I remember just listening to tango music and also alternative tango music. And I was just very into the music. And I think it's that song, is it Milongon? It's just electro.
That name sounds familiar.
Tango.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Electro tango.
Yeah,
okay.
So I remember listening to that song and I was like, oh my gosh, the beat is just so good. And I just want to move to it. I want to just take these steps that I just go and do quick steps here and there. I just have this desire to really want to run. Sometimes when not that I'm a runner, but when you run, there's a certain freedom from that song, that feeling that it gave me. I just want to run with it. But I didn't know how to. I will have to rely on a leader to lead whichever direction I'm going and whichever syncopated steps that would, reflect the musicality. And I started thinking about, okay, maybe if I learn to lead, I can actually do this. I can actually dance freely. I can freestyle. So I had that seed in my head. So something happened. I went to a milonga locally and I had a terrible time. It was actually 2 milongas. Well, it was a practica and a milonga the next evening in a restaurant. And that was the very first time I went to that community. And the first night it was a practica at some studio. It was okay. But then I danced with this instructor. There were a couple of instructors there that night, and one was super nice, but then the other one was not so nice. He was speaking a lot the whole time when I was trying to follow him, and he kept criticizing me. And I thought, okay, you know what? This is a practica. I'm supposed to be open to feedback. It's okay. But also he was very ballroomy too, talking about ballroom. His frame and everything was just felt very ballroomy to me. And I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm new here. He meant well. So I try not to think too much of it. Then the very next evening, I went to the restaurant where they had this milonga, and I wasn't really getting a lot of dances. I think I only danced with him. I don't think I danced with anybody else. He caboseoed me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to do well this time. I'm gonna take whatever he told me yesterday, and I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna try to not be a failure. But as soon as we danced, he started criticizing me again. And I'm like, wait a minute, he's a teacher. It's a milonga. And I don't know if he said I was moving too much the last time, so I try not to move too much this time, or it was the other way around. But I was trying, but then he started criticizing me again. And then after the second song, I broke the tanda.
Good for you.
I said, thank you, but I'm tired. And then I turned around And I started walking back to my table. And he yelled behind me and said, "That's right, dancing with me takes a lot." And I grabbed my stuff, did a quick goodbye to people around me. I ran out of there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. And then nobody came out after me to check if this newcomer was okay. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not coming back here. So I didn't dance at all while I was there for 3 years in that city.
Wow. So that experience like really scarred you. Like you just really did not want to go at all.
Yeah. And it probably has something to do with me leading too. Then I didn't have to deal with that. Like I would have more, agency. I really wanted to dance to music the way I want to dance. And even when I was following, and I was enjoying the music, but I always feel like, oh, if only he would do that and I could do this to match the music, that would be amazing. And so that part, and also the social aspect of having bad experiences, definitely. And then, the more I got back into tango, that at that time with my husband, I danced when I was single. I was more popular.
Really? So you did notice a shift once you got married in terms of who asked you to dance? That's so interesting because recently I made the same observation about myself, or actually somebody suggested it because I was sharing with someone that I went to an event and I noticed that there were a lot of leaders who did not choose to dance with me that typically do. And I kind of wrote it off as the fact that I'm leading a lot. And so maybe some leaders, they don't necessarily like to dance with women who lead as much. But then somebody else suggested that it's because I got married. And I just thought that was such a silly, I guess, attribute that doesn't make that much difference to me, obviously. But, I keep hearing that as an observation from others. So it seems like there's more and more, legitimacy to think that way.
Personally, from my observation, now that we travel for tango to like festivals and marathons, I found a pattern that when we're both there together during the early part of the event, of that evening, let's say, and even if we're not sitting together, I'd be like, okay, we dance a tanda, we swap roles, and I'm like, okay, you go have fun, I'm gonna go. and then I would be like not happy with the amount of dances I was getting. But after he goes back to his room and I continue to dance, surprisingly, something shifted and I get more dances. I actually had a friend tell me that she was talking to a DJ at a big event, one of the DJs, and they were chatting and it was a good conversation. She was sure that he was going to ask her to dance later. And they exchanged Facebook information. And of course, her Facebook profile picture had her husband on it. Oh. So he never asked her to dance. So I think, so I think there's something.
I think for a lot of us, and especially, I don't know if you think that way as a woman, I don't think of that because I'm there to dance with whoever is available. I don't really care if they're married or not. But perhaps what, this reveals that for some people, it's not just about the dance. It's not just about like, oh, it doesn't matter who I dance with. It's just about tango. I can dance with anyone. For some people, it very much is about this experience of chemistry that they want to experience and go there with people. And they don't feel comfortable when they know that somebody is not available, I guess. And as I even say that, I'm like, that just sounds kind of strange. But I get it. It has to do with a lot of ways that people come into tango and their familiarity with other people and their just familiarity with the social etiquette thing. Now, you've now been leading for a few years.
Yes.
And your husband follows as well. So you guys can switch roles. And I'm sure that's been an interesting journey, probably working together on that. Cause like, I don't know, would you say that it's been a challenge to work on tango with a partner who's also your husband? Has there been conflicts that you guys had to like figure out how to work through, or did you already have that foundation of good communication before you started tango and that made it easier?
So we have very different styles of learning. We just can't find a way to really practice together.
And you had to accept that.
We have to accept that. And so I have my own practice partner. I'm very lucky.
Now, with your leading, did you find that your transition into leading provided you with the sort of the avenues for expression that you wanted? Did you find that you were getting that satisfaction in terms of your creative expression, musicality that you were hearing in your head?
Yes, I got there. Not right away. I think the first 6 months was the hardest. I think for me, the actual leading, the projection, the pushing, and that was really hard for me. But after that, it got easier, and I stuck with very basic patterns for I think even like 2 years, just doing like, what did I do? The two things, Ocho Cortado and Media Luna, and I just kept doing those and work on the embrace, on the technique. But that still let me play with the musicality, with music I love, and it's not until like in the last couple of years that I branched out to do bigger movements like saccadas and other more expressive movements for like more romantic lyrical songs. So I do find that I can dance even outside of tango. Like if we go to a wedding, me and my husband, I feel like I don't just glue to the same spot with my 2 feet and just like sway. I can actually move around now. I know how to like pick up my feet and turn around. Maybe I'm still a little awkward and self-conscious, but I know how to move, and I attribute that to my leading. If I didn't lead, I'm still like gonna, okay, babe, this song sounds like we could dance tango too. Why don't you lead me so I can show off some footwork? But
some of your boleos and ochos.
Yes, exactly. So, but I don't need that anymore. I lead him. I was like they have some salsa music at a wedding, and I led him. But people think he's leading because they can't tell who is leading.
And for them, they can't imagine a woman leading. They think that it's the man automatically. What was it like for you to deal with some of the pushback against women leading that's been sort of consistently there a little bit? I know we've talked about it a little bit in our initial conversation, and there's been a lot of discussion around whether women leaders measure up to the standard of leading that perhaps people prefer, or whether women leaders have the skills to uphold the image of leading. So
I will say that I was warned early that I should not lead by a man.
By who?
He was actually a practice partner. One day I told him, you know what, I think I'm going to start leading. And he was like, don't do it. You're going to ruin your following. And there's so much skill you need to learn in each role. If you split your efforts, you can't master your role. So he doesn't believe in, women leading. And I was like, okay. I didn't think much about it. I just remember him rejecting that idea. and I didn't let it influence my decision, but my actual decision to start leading came later. But there are people in my community that actually are vocal about women leading. So my friend actually told me she was at a milonga. I was probably there. My practice partner was probably there because we're the two really active dual role dancers in the community. And this man sat down next to my friend and said to her, if you start leading like them, I'm not going to ask you to dance anymore. If you become a leader, I'm never going to ask you to dance anymore. So
that's just like unsolicited piece of information.
Yeah. Yep. I'm glad that she told me, because you kind of know that there is, there are things like that going on, but you're like, okay, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe no one is actually saying it out loud. Maybe some of them don't ask you to dance because you're leading, but maybe it's something else. But it is actual very negative views. So that's a big part why I start writing on my blog, because I'm very passionate about the gender issues. Like, maybe it's a good time to talk about what happened that inspired me to start writing in the first place last year. I went to visit a city because my husband's conference. I just went to explore and found a milonga. I went for the class before just to meet people, mainly to meet women, so that I can, get some groundwork started, because get to know people, then maybe they'll dance with me. So that was the goal. And as soon as I got there, the instructor's male, and then there's 3 guys, 1 woman. Aside from me, there was 1 woman. And I'm like, okay, I have no choice. At first, I was like, maybe I'll just watch. Maybe I won't even participate in the class because I don't want to follow. And but they were like, come on in, let's so I paired up, and they were doing like a molinete with some parada, and it wasn't super challenging, but I knew that the men were maybe just starting to learn the material. They were not very good at it. Now, I don't like to teach when I'm in a class. I don't want to tell a man what to do. Even though I know how to lead, I have learned from my past experience that they really don't appreciate it. So I kept my mouth shut. I didn't say anything, but I was super tired because we woke up at 4 or 5 a.m. to catch the plane. So I'm just going through the motion of following them. And the teacher came over and said, May, I want you to dance with more passion. And and then he paired up with my partner, and then he demonstrated, and then he threw in all the elaborate rouleaux and unled pivots and kicks, and then he's like that. When he was demonstrating all the embellishment, he first told me to do it, and I did it, and then he wasn't happy that I was like not all the way up on the balls of my feet because I was in flats. So I just lifted a little bit, and he kept saying, okay, you have to go up higher on the balls of your feet. And then the class actually for a moment turned into like embellishment class. And at this time, another woman came to the class, and he was like, okay, you come dance with me and show the class how it's done. So the woman was also in flats, and he was still not happy with how she wasn't going all the way up on the balls of her feet. but then eventually he was like, I don't need you women. I'm just gonna dance. I'm just gonna show you how it's done. Like he didn't say that, but he showed that. So he paired up with a male leader, and then he did all the embellishments, and it's like it was like prescribing the embellishments. It's like when you come here, you do a little pivot, and before you step over, and then before you step over, kick really high, and then like it became a choreography class. So he went back to help with the other two couples, and then we rotated, and I went to the next male leader, and I start to dance, and like it was really uncomfortable. The embrace was like the guy had his arms straight out, but I still didn't want to correct them, so I just like I started like looking behind him instead of looking at his chest. I'm just kind of like gazed like I had a blank stare, because I'm like, okay, if I focus too much, then I will focus on my pain and my suffering. So I'm just gonna like space out and just go through the motion. And then the instructor came over again, not telling the guy to fix his posture, but tell me, May, I want you to look at his chest. I'm like,
oh my goodness.
Give me a
Wow.
break. So I did, and then he went away. And then I paired up with the third guy, and I danced again. And this time I was like, I'm really so tired. I'm just gonna close my eyes. And then he finally came over one more time and said, May, I need you to open your eyes. And I lost it. I said, you know what? I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning to catch the flight to get here. It took me over an hour with 2 forms of transportation in the freezing rain to get to the studio. I am exhausted. So I said all that. And he was like, okay, he backed away, and then he just left. So I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody's gonna think I'm a diva. I'm like, whatever, I don't care. So then the class was thankfully over, and there was an influx of women for the milonga. And I just danced all night with the women. I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I stayed. It was amazing. Like everyone was like, all the women were so welcoming and so nice and so happy to dance with me. And I didn't dance with the men that were in the class. There was another man that came later. And I remember the guys were like, oh, here comes the best dancer. And so I looked over and I saw this, oh my gosh, he's like, I think it's beyond Nuevo style. Like he was just doing craziest like fusion that are like acrobatic. So I was like, I'm not gonna dance with him. And but then as I was finishing a dance, and I was walking off with my partner. He cut me off in the middle of the dance floor and held out his hand. And I'm like, okay, first of all, it's such a small milonga. Like the space was big, but there's only so many people. If I reject him, like it's kind of gonna look bad. And I was already a diva before. And you know what? It could be a good way to challenge myself and see how good I am staying on my axis. So I was like, okay, let me try it. So I danced with him, and he was like doing crazy moves. Luckily, I don't have any injury or any fear of falling, but that's not the case with most women. Like a lot of women, you know, you never know. And he made a comment. He said, "Oh, I don't remember how he said it, but it had to do with my age. I love how you can do this because you're so young or something." I'm like, you're being so ageist and sexist, and I'm like, yeah.
On top of just inviting you on the dance floor without even following Capaceo in any way.
Exactly. And like, it just because I'm young doesn't mean I like this kind of movement, doesn't mean I cannot injure myself or have past injuries. But anyway, so all those things happened. Then I started writing about it because I want to write about the unpleasant side of it, but also wanted to write about how good the women were to me, and they offered me a ride back to my hotel.
What do you think now that you've had all this experience leading looking back at that comment that you heard from that practice partner who was like, you shouldn't start leading because your following is going to get all bad because of leading. How do you, and I have heard this sentiment from other people. I don't understand how that can still hold so much power over people's minds, like, because it doesn't make much sense to me. But what do you say to that now, or how do you respond to someone like that who's saying this sort of point of view?
First of all, I'm going to take a stance and say this is very sexist. and I do believe it's coming from men who are insecure. And not every man, every male leader is like that. Of course, I'm hoping that it's a very small minority, but they're very, very vocal about it. And the thing is, because we're challenging the power that they have because of the gender imbalance, when we are available as leaders, then women in our community have more choices to dance, to see who they can dance with. So they don't have to put up with bad behaviors from very, certain leaders, right? It's hopefully very few, but still, like if it's a very small pool of leaders, male leaders to choose from, then a lot of women feel like if they don't put up with it, then they're going to get punished, they're going to get ignored, so they have to dance with them. This is actually my the same friend that someone told her not to start leading, otherwise they won't dance with her anymore. The same friend told me that another man told her that because I rejected him, he went huffing and puffing to tell her that I'm on his blacklist for a year. So I don't know. My friend is very sweet and sensitive. Maybe that's why she's hearing all these stuff. But anyway, so when we step up and learn to lead, that just opens up a lot more possibility for other women in the community. Even if they just want to follow, at least if they're willing to dance with us, they have more choices. So they don't have to put up with bad behaviors from some leaders. And I think that is upsetting to those few but vocal sexist male leaders, and so they feel like they have to, discredit us. And what better way to discredit us than to attack the most prized features of being a follower, right? Like the embrace, the connection. Those are the most precious things that we all value. And if they say, oh, when you as a follower become a leader, you'll lose that, then it will really drive some fear in women. And on top of that, they will say, oh yeah, you will start back leading, and women have terrible navigation. And all these things, I think, is fear mongering. And I think it's to achieve the purpose of not, having their entitlement and their power, their position of power being challenged. So as far as what I think about how a woman's dancing will change after she starts leading, it can only get better. Like when I was a follower, I thought I was good. I was dancing for a long time. I had gaps in between and all that, but I thought, okay, I've been dancing a long time now. I think I'm good. I can follow. A lot of people ask me to dance. Popular dancers, young, good-looking dancers ask me to dance, and also ask me out to coffee. So it's not always about the dance. Okay?
If they're inviting you to coffee, that means it's legit.
And then once my husband, came into the picture, then I'm invisible. So that tells you, okay, are you really a good follower, or is it because of other factors? So I started to, that was the time that I started leading, and I started learning to lead, and I started realizing, oh my gosh, I have so much room to improve as a follower. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know there are all these ways I can do better. Because now you're on both sides, you know what is good and what is not good, and because you have to, it's not something like men, they're like, oh, I can just follow. Like, I'll swap with you. You can just lead me. I can follow. And then they struggle with the basic Osho. They can't even perform an Osho. They don't know how to dissociate. They lean on you. They're heavy. But they think they can follow because, oh, I've been leading 20 years. I know what a follower is supposed to do. But can you really do it? Right? So when you are, when you understand both sides, what is good and what is not good, and you have to get proper instructions in order to help you. It's not like you dance enough and you'll figure it out. It's nothing like that. Leading or following, you have to get proper instructions. And throughout this whole process, there's no way you will regress in your skill as a follower. You can only get better. And I feel that some people say that, oh yeah, I think once she started leading, her embrace is no longer the same, her connection is no longer the same. But I have to ask, if you dance with a woman not knowing that she's dual role, and there is a miscommunication, but you think she's just a traditional follower, would you think so much of it? Yeah. But if you've seen this woman dancing both roles and you dance with her and something is not clicking, you're going to attribute that to the fact that she leads. Yeah. So I think this is just reinforcing that confirmation bias. And the thing is, even if it is true that, when you learn a new skill, you definitely struggle in the beginning, and it's just human nature, right? But when women do it, when they are learning to lead, if let's entertain the possibility that it is true that, okay, she has been focusing on her leading and she might be not connecting as well or whatever with the male leader that particular day, it could be because of other circumstances. Maybe she had a bad day. It doesn't necessarily mean it's her leading. But even let's say if it's really about her leading, okay, this leader, instead of saying, oh, she's doing such a good job, juggling both, like I should be supportive and I should, and be encouraging and dance with her as much as possible to be supportive. But instead of thinking about that, he decides, you know what, she isn't a good follower anymore. She used to be a good follower, but now I don't click with her. I'm just gonna give her like a year or two to figure things out before I ask her again. I'm like, is this not punitive? Is this like, I feel like you're punishing the women for trying to do better. So, and that is another thing about floorcraft, is that women start later. A lot of women start later to become a leader, right? If they've been a follower for a while and then they start leading. Some may start from day one, but a lot of us start after we've been following. So when we start leading, we're already less experienced in floorcraft than someone that started with us, who is a male leader, right? And on top of that, we're splitting our time between leading and following socially. So of course we get less exposure to floorcraft. But that doesn't automatically mean that we're bad navigators. We just need more practice and more tolerance. And because we're so few in numbers, we're going to stick out. And you're going to notice every time an Asian driver makes a mistake, you're like, an Asian driver. Because she's a woman, because she's a female leader, she does not have the natural instinct to protect her followers like we men innately have this ability. That's another thing I heard, is men just are hardwired to protect their women. If you're publicizing and perpetuating these ideas publicly, that actually does harm the community. It harms the women who want to lead or who are already leading. If you keep it to yourself and decide, oh, I don't want to dance with her because for whatever reason, that's totally your right. But if you tell everybody, oh, I'm not going to dance with her because she started leading and she sucks now as a follower, and then people repeat this, and those few that are very vocal keep spreading this information and makes it sound like it's mainstream belief, that is really detrimental.
Well, I don't really think that there's a danger of that happening because, as you've pointed out, really where this is coming from for a lot of people is fear and insecurity. And the fact remains that a lot of us female leaders are actually exceptional leaders. We have what other leaders don't have. We have an advantage having followed for a long time. We have better musicality a lot of times because we know the music more. We've received it as followers, so we know more possibilities for interpretation. And those are advantages that get they're not really that acknowledged for women leaders, but
Right.
I think they're very obvious when certain dancers get to experience a dual role dancer. For as many people that have rejected me and not wanted to dance with me, I've had so many more people who've come my way who have been very excited to dance with me and appreciate my dance. So it seems like ultimately, even for people who are afraid of going into leading because they are afraid that somebody is going to stop dancing with them, ultimately, there's so many other dancers out there that I don't think there's any shortage of people wanting to dance with dual role dancers because we know how good it can be to dance with somebody who understands both roles. But I felt like I wanted to harken back to something you said at the beginning, and you mentioned that story of the guy who said that you walked away off the floor, and he's like, "That's right. It takes a lot to dance with me." I feel like that's the attitude that we can all collectively as women take. That ultimately, if all of these men who feel this way put us on blacklists and want to walk off the floor, we can just be like, that's right. It takes a lot to dance with me. Like it takes a lot of you getting over your ego, getting over your fear, your insecurity. It takes you to, put up some sort of effort, put up your own vulnerability and become sort of open to change. And I'm really excited that we had this conversation because a lot of stuff that you went through and intuitively found your way into is stuff that I found to be true as well. And that's the power of sharing these kinds of stories in my mind. And this is why I really went into podcasting and having this format, because my biggest changes in my life happened when I was inspired by other women making strides in the direction of things that they wanted in their life and me watching them succeed. So the more we as women connect over this thing called tango, and we lead and we support each other in this very practical way, dancing with each other, the more it's going to overwhelm that very small-minded attitude. Because ultimately, how far can you get? Like, how many people are you going to blacklist? Let's say there's going to be 70% of women eventually are going to know both roles. So you're going to go ahead and blacklist all of them. Like, you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? Very powerful conversation we've had. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Thank you so much.